Alright, next up is the roll axis assembly. So get your pieces together. There's the front and back pieces, the ribs or the braces, and the assorted hardware, some plastic washers, 35mm rods, and the long 45mm screw. It'll go through the pivot. When you're putting this together, put the rods on first, the aluminum rods, and your side braces in. But don't and leave it. Don't put this on yet, because you have to merge this with this, and if you do, you won't be able to get the right clearance to put the screw and the washers in. In the current manual that you download from the site, it tells you to use the long 45mm screw and put it through the pivot, and then it says to put on a 2mm nylon washer along with a 3.5mm washer. And my kit didn't come with the 2mm washer, so I did a little checking, and this nylon washer is actually 5.5. So if you don't have that washer, don't worry about it. These are the right size. So let's put the screw through the pivot, one nylon washer, and you're ready to mate it with your U-bridge. Okay, so get your U-bridge. Here's the pivot where you're going to put the screw through. Right? And slide it right through. Alright, slide it right through out the other side. Take the other plastic washer, put it on, and now you can put on your other the other part of the roll axis assembly. Alright? I need 3 hands here. Hold on a second. It's a bit tricky putting the last roll axis assembly on there, because you have to line up all the tabs, and the CNC work is really tight, so that's a good thing. It makes it extra strong. But if you lay it down with your fingers and thumbs like this, and you can line up the tabs, it'll snap together pretty easily. On and done. Okay, and then you just put the 2 long screws, the 8mm cap head screws, and then a self-locking nylon nut here, and you're all set. As you're tightening this up, a good way to tell if you have too much tension or not in this screw, because you want this thing to be able to pivot freely. You can see how I have it here. Tighten it up where it's really tight and the roll axis assembly doesn't move, and then back it off a little bit until it drops. Bam, and then you're good to go. Okay, the next thing we want to do is attach the roll axis servo on a little sliding plate that fits onto the bottom of your U-board. It can go on this side or it can go on this side. But here's where the instructions are in my opinion, a little weak and a little lacking. This is your servo mounting plate, and here's one of the 4 aluminum rods that you have, and you can see there are mounting holes on one side, the other side, the ones on the end, I don't know what they're for. And it tells you to mount the mounting plate to this aluminum rod using M2 by 5mm screws, and no way does that happen. You have to use the M3 by 5, so they're a little bigger, and it goes in these 2 holes here, the closest together ones. And you'll also notice that the holes are drilled farther away from one side than they are the other, and that also has a bearing on how you mount it to this sliding servo plate. The way it sets on the backing on the U-frame, this is going to get confusing, so bear with me. The way it sits on the back of the U-frame, you want this piece to be flush, and you want the backing plate, this rod, this aluminum rod, to be flush so that it's a nice tight fit. And the only way you can do that is by positioning these holes closest to the edge, like to the bottom of, well, turn it around, to the top, excuse me, to the top of the slot. That way it's a nice flush finish. Alright, so got it mounted, and you can see how nice and flush it is right across the top. There's no gap. Alright, now we're going to put it on the U-board, and that'll require some more discussion. Alright, we're at the point where we're going to install the roll axis servo on the U-board. And then here's your U-board. We've got it all assembled, right? All the screws are in. Well, they're not in mine. I took them out for a reason, to show you something. So what you're going to do now is mount this servo adjusting plate to these slotted spaces here in the U-board. And it's nice. It looks really simple, right? You just put it on there and you put two M2 by 5mm screws through the back side. But you'll soon discover that there's no way to get a driver in there to put the screws in. It's just impossible. The angles are impossible. So, I mean, you can do it, but it requires a lot of finagling. The easiest way and the best way is to remove all the screws from the bottom U-board plate and then pull it off and then install it that way. And if you knew enough about it, you would install this piece before you even put this bottom plate on. But you have to kind of go through the assembly process, and you get to that oh crap point. So instead of trying to jimmy with my driver and get it through these holes, I'm just going to pull this back plate off and install it so I can make sure it's nice and tight. Okay, so I've got my plate off, and remember, keep your reference here. I've got my plate off, and I'm going to mount this servo right here on these two slots. Okay, let's get that out of the way. It is kind of a pain to realign all the tabs on the side braces in the top, but believe me, you'll be happier doing it this way than trying to get your driver through the frame and getting it tightened up right. All right. Okay, through there. And these holes are all slotted, so you can adjust this later to get the mesh right between the CNC gears. And there. Need to align it. I'm pushing it all the way forward for now. Okay, so that's that, and then we'll snap this back on the U-board frame, and then tighten that back all up, and we'll be happy. Okay, so that was a little frustrating, but here's the servo mount, the roll axis servo mount. You can see it adjusts. Well, now you can see it adjusts forward and back and goes this way and that way. So we need to put the servo on. I want to give you a lot of clear images of how this fits together, because it's real confusing when you look at the manual. Alright. And this is attached from the inside in here. And there's the hole that you really can't get through. There's only one hole you can get into it with. You can get in enough to tighten it, but not enough to install it because you're at such a bad angle. You can do it, but I'd prefer to just do it beforehand if I had to do it over. Now, in order to get the proper alignment for your servo with the roll axis gear, you're going to want to put the servo with the gear pivot end closest to the center, and you want to put it in from the back. You don't want to put the flanges in the front or you'll get a misalignment. You want them to go in the back like that with the pivot closest to the roll axis. Okay? Alright, so I've got my servo mounted on the little slide mount. I'm going to put my servo gear on here just for alignment purposes right now, because again, once you power up the servos, they'll center and then everything will be off. So it looks like my depth is good from here to here. It's perfectly even. And then the only thing I want to do is, let's see, that mesh right there looks pretty good. You don't want it doesn't need to be really tight, but you want it to get a good grip in there. I just need my right driver and tighten up this adjustment screw here. There's one, and then I can pull my gear off. Oh, I can get to it right here. I think I can. Anyway, just pull the gear off and then tighten the other one. Okay, so that's what it looks like. A good look, because it's really confusing. Alright. That was the hardest part. The next part is the fun part. You have to put it together.